Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about how I paint water with reflections. Reflections are one of my favorite things to paint, but they can also be tricky and complicated. Bodies of water can look very different depending on their size, the time of day, and the weather conditions, so there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach in my opinion. However, by showing one example, I hope to offer some insights that can be generally useful. I'll begin by showing you my reference photo. This is a small lake that I hiked to in the summer, and as you can see, there's a lot going on in the water. There are reflections from trees, shadows from tree trunks, reflections of the sky, and reflections of the plants and flowers on the shore. So where do we start with such a complex picture? With watercolor, we generally paint from lightest to darkest, and that same principle applies here. To start, I'm going to break my reference photo down into different layers. First, I'm going to paint the reflection of the sky because that's the lightest part of the water. Then I'm going to paint the reflection of the trees that are toward the back of the water. Next, I'll paint the areas where the tree reflections overlap with the sky reflection. Finally, there's a small area of reflection that's particularly light on the left, and I'm going to use masking fluid to cover it up and then paint it last. Here's where I was at with my painting before I got started. I'm going to begin by applying masking fluid to that fourth layer so that I can work on the rest of the water without worrying about it. I also put masking fluid around the area with plants and flowers on the right, so I didn't paint over it on accident. Now it's time to paint the reflection of the sky. The actual sky is a very bright and clear blue color with puffy clouds. In general, reflections should use similar colors to the actual items they are reflecting, but the colors should be a little bit darker. That's because underneath the reflection, there are dirt and plants and rocks at the bottom of the lake. The bright colors from the sky and the surrounding objects are mixed with the muddier colors of the ground underneath the water. I'm painting wet on wet and trying to fill in all the areas where the sky will be visible. This is kind of like negative painting. It can be a little difficult to tell where you should paint since we can't see the tree reflections yet. I do my best to estimate, and I err on the side of having more coverage rather than less. I'm going to be painting over some of this sky area with the tree reflections later, so I don't need to be super accurate here. Now it's time to paint the reflections of the trees. I'm working wet on wet, starting with the reflections of the brightest areas, like the little plants growing by the shore. Then I used darker shades of green to paint reflections of the trees. I covered the area with the lighter green first, and then started adding darker reflections and shadows from tree trunks. I'm letting the water do most of the work for me and not worrying about being too precise. Next, it's time to paint where these two areas meet, which involves lots of little brush strokes. I can't paint wet on wet and have these brush strokes be distinct, so I'm using more water in my paint mix than normal. This gives it a soft and blended feel, but allows me to still be accurate. You'll see that there are a lot of colors at play here, and I'm trying to be mindful of what I'm reflecting and what colors I should use based on that. For example, the trees on the left side are darker than the trees on the right, so you'll see more shadows and dark colors on the left side of the reflection. Now I'm painting the reflection of this little chunk of land over here, and then I'm going to paint tree reflections around it. I think the reflection of the flowers shows what I mean when I say that the color of a reflection is generally muddier than the actual item itself. These flowers are bright pink, but their reflection was more of a brown color with a little bit of pink mixed in. Finally, I'm removing the masking fluid and painting the last little reflective area on the left. Without masking fluid, it would have been hard to paint in the vicinity without accidentally covering those little lines up. I also removed the masking fluid from the right side and darkened the area where the land meets the water. And that's the finished painting. I hope this provided a little insight into the process. Let me know if you have any tips and tricks you use for painting reflections. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good week and happy painting.